Okay, we're on. This is, I guess I'm the host of this show. This is Richard Nikoley. I blog at freetheanimal.com. And one of my buddies is right to my left here. I don't know whether it's left or right for you, but his name is Sean Ring. And he is a fellow expat, but there's more to the story. Sean writes a daily financially centered email newsletter. And I say centered because it's not like it's every day, it's a bunch of charts and exclamation points and capital letters. So those of you who get financial stuff on email know exactly what I mean. So excuse me. He also is an educator or trainer, teacher for bankers. Now, could I make some jokes about that? But I'm going to let him explain. He's currently residing in Italy, and previously for a number of years was in the Philippines, not far from me, actually. And here in Thailand. I'm coming to you from Thailand. Isn't technology cool, right? So Sean, go ahead and correct everything I just said.
Well, first, thank you for having me. I haven't been this excited since you butt dialed me when I was still in Asia. So it's great to talk to you again. Yeah. And, I'm thrilled to be here.
I did butt dial you, didn't I? And you popped right up because I was.
I'm so excited to see you. I was like, hey, he's finally calling. This is brilliant. So yeah, so that was excellent. So I won't correct everything you said. I'll just kind of build on it. So, and especially for your Free the Animal subscribers, of which I am a loyal and very happy subscriber as well. So, like Richard said, I am Sean Ring. I am from New Jersey originally. For something I did in a past life, I still haven't figured that out. I stayed in the States until I was about 24. I moved to London after that. I stayed there for 10 years. I was in banking at that point. I actually was a futures broker, so screaming down the lines, and that's why I lost all my hair and gained 50 pounds, and it was rough. And I decided after that to become a financial trainer. I had taken a year off and stupidly had not adjusted my I was living. So I decided to, I need some money, so let me get into training. I did drama in high school, so I thought, finance and drama, teaching, that's all good, no problem. It was very, very successful from the get-go. So I was asked to move to Asia to help expand the business. We did, it was fun. I moved to Singapore, I lived there for 6 years. I met my wife there. Then I got lured back into banking as an internal trainer. So that's why I moved to Hong Kong, and I was there for 3.5 years. And then got tired of that and realized that was a mistake almost immediately. But then my wife became pregnant with our son, so I got stuck there for an extra 2.5 years, really, just to make sure everything went well, and we had enough money to go and live in the Philippines comfortably and easily, which we did. And while I was in the Philippines, I was able to start writing, which is something I first explored back in 2006. But I just couldn't make it work. So one of the reasons why I admire you so much, Richard, is you made it work very early on from a blogging standpoint. I think that's just amazing. So I work for Agora Financial.
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the big payoff, though.
Yeah, it's coming, man. It's just you're right there. It's right about to do that.
It's too damn bad. I love it so much. That's my problem.
It's great though. It's a great outlet. And again, I love the way you write. I've only really I just passed my 1 year anniversary writing The Root. So the newsletter I write is called The Root Awakening.
I forgot to mention that. What a great name.
That's okay.
The Root Awakening. I mean, it's like you could spend 5 years thinking about a name, and it's like Root Awakening. Fuck yeah. All right.
I wish I could take credit for that. Addison Wiggin, who is my good friend and mentor, he started it 20 years ago. He started the Daily Reckoning. The Daily Reckoning is kind of like the end of day. This is what happened in the markets. 5-minute forecast in the middle, and I am literally the morning cup of coffee getting thrown in your face.
All these guys, they're all this kind of Paradigm Press, Agora stuff. Right. Doug Casey, and and everybody going way the fuck back, and even James Dale Davidson and Mogg with their book, The Great Awakening. Yeah, yes, I'm familiar with all this stuff going back like fucking 30 years.
Well, it's funny because I started reading this stuff when I was on the futures desk. Because the problem was, I'm looking at you from my computer screen, but when I was a broker, I had like 4 other screens, and I was young, and even though I had 2 finance degrees, so I did my undergrad at Villanova, and I went to London Business School to get a master's, which is amazing school apparently. But I look at the screen all day and go, why is this going up and down? I don't get it. I was too on top of it, looking at the little minutia moves, and it was very difficult to get the long-term trends done because hedge fund managers were just screaming at me all day. So for me, they were the outlet, the people who helped me, explain, at least to myself, what was going on. I found it really interesting that once you're inside a bank, at least at that time, they never trained you. It was kind of like, here's your computer, there's a phone, good luck. And it's like,
saying, well, back when I traded options, I was using the trading platform that these clever guys came up with. At first, I was using a site called Options Express. You probably right.
Absolutely.
Then everybody's talking about this new app, and so I get it. And you know what the name of the app was? Think or Swim. Think or Swim. Think or Swim. So when you
swim, yes.
trading, it's throw you in the pool.
That's right. That's right. It does. It's frightening. And again, like I said, I had 2 finance degrees, and I didn't really understand what was going on. Like the hedge fund managers that I used to deal for were brilliant, and they made tons of money. And I'd be like, how are they doing this? Like, and one of my great regrets in life is not trying to back out their algorithms, because I in those days, they didn't just shoot orders from computer to computer. They would call someone like me up and go, okay, my algorithm says buy 500 of this, buy 100 of this, buy 1,000 of this. And I never tried to back out those points. I'm like, I should have done that.
And they still do the phone thing in movies because it's more dramatic. If the guy just pushes the buttons, right, it's not quite so dramatic. He's like, I need blah, 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 blah. Oh, boom.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
So a little about the banking training. Are you training traders or what does that encompass?
So what that does, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, all the big banks that you could imagine, HSBC, Standard Chartered, DBS, what they'll do is they will go into the top universities and they will recruit people out. And again, when I say top universities, for investment banking, it's usually exclusively Ivy League, Oxbridge, Stanford, Chicago type people. For operations, they finally got smart and they started recruiting like the middle class kids that went to good schools, because if you're a Harvard kid and you get into an operations program, you're out in 5 minutes. You're just like, I'm not doing this. I'm not processing stuff because it's very labor intensive. It's not strategic at all. It is tactical. It's day-to-day stuff. It's really boring.
Have they ever thought about recruiting drug dealers from the hood?
No. That's where they launder their money from. That's where they launder their money from. The interesting thing about what you just said, though, like you'll find a lot of guys, because I worked in London for so long, a lot of East Enders, like the traders, they know what they're doing. And they are not necessarily those Ivy League Oxbridge kids that just kids who've been gambling their whole lives. Yeah. Absolutely.
Go out and recruit bookies, for example, right?
Yeah. One of my
numbers
very best,
right?
Exactly, and they think very quickly. One of my best friends from London Business School, funnily enough, went on to be a partner at Goldman Sachs, and he ran a cricket book while he was at University of India. That was his job. So trading for him was easy. I would look at it and go, how are you doing that? Like have no idea. We'd be in a pub having a glass of scotch, and I'd be like, "You got to explain this to me." Because once I got into training, I used to go to those guys and go, "All right, listen, I know the theory behind all this. Give me the stories to make it."
They're fucking amazing, because as the cash is coming in, as the bets are coming in, they know their bid and ask shifts and everything as it's coming in. It's
Yeah, and they know how to shade rates. And I think at first everyone has just a bit of a learning curve, but those guys tend to pick it up like boom. And it's just, listen, for them, it is indeed buy low, sell high. It's just what they're able to do is figure out what is low and what is high way faster than the average bear.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about what I said at the beginning. We're both expats, as you've already explained. You lived 10 years, and in a past life, I lived 5 years in Japan. I lived 2 years in France, and now I've been just over 2 years here in Thailand. To me, it's the greatest kind of life ever, right? And I'm talking about the whole thing, not just Thailand. I like. There's something about being an American but living not in America. It's cool, right?
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
You took another big step. So I'll go ahead and explain that. You know what I mean?
Yes. So I am one of the few libertarians who's actually renounced his citizenship. I joke around about that because I find a lot of the writing in the newsletters that you mentioned, people are like, I'm going to get rid of your passport, get rid of your passport, get rid of your passport. None of them ever do. Andrew Henderson, to his great credit at Nomad Capitalist, has done it and explains how he did it. And I really, really respect that about him. But so many of them are like, oh, it's time to give up that passport. And it's like, well, you still have yours. Why isn't yours gone if you're telling everyone to get rid of it? For me, I have to admit, it was a bit of a no-brainer. I don't know how this happened. Okay, I had a wonderful, idyllic childhood.
Hey,
sorry, go ahead.
Sean, let's preface this one thing.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You're not some American hating commie. That's not why you did it, right? So that's nothing, right? And I presume you still love America, in that loose sense.
Yes.
Or at least the American spirit and whatnot. You did it for very practical reasons.
Yeah, it was practical. I mean, listen, I'm not happy with what's going on in the country, and a lot of the things that many people did predict would happen have come to pass and are now really passing with frightening speed.
The slippery slope slid all the way down.
Yeah. Like we're at a 90-degree angle right now on the slippery slope. So I moved to London in 1999 because when I went to Villanova, I drank for 4 years. I partied for 4 years. I was just like, just give me the degree and get me out of here. I did not enjoy university. In fact, the only part of university I enjoyed were like the history and religion classes. They were great. But I got my degree in finance. It was 1996, everybody still had a job. So if you got out of school, you were getting a job. It was just that simple. It wasn't like now where millennials come out with $250,000 of debt and zero income. I do feel for them in that way. For me, it was like, okay, I grew up 8 miles from Wall Street, New Jersey. I'm just going to go get a job there, and I did get a job there after pretty much right after graduation. It took me 2 months, and I had a job. I worked there for 3 years. I was in operations, which again it's fine. It's an okay part of the bank. People with ops now make a ton of money too. They make $200-300 grand a year. It's not like they're not doing stuff, but it's not the glamorous part. It is very process oriented. If you are particularly detail oriented, you like solving puzzles, it's a great job for you. I found it incredibly boring. So what happened was one of my desk mates got promoted to the equity trading desk as a trader assistant, and I was furious. I'm like, I am way smarter than that dude. Craig, I love you. You're still great. No offense, but I'm like, I should get that job. That should get me. And my boss pulled me into his office. He said, "Listen, I know you're upset about this, but don't worry. I was going to send Craig to London to do a business trip for me and figure out how global operations work." Now, again, I was so ignorant at this point. I had no idea that London was this huge financial center. I had no clue. I went, okay, send me to London. That was like the consolation prize. So I got to London for 2 weeks. And the thing about London that was amazing to me is that one, it's historic, and two, there's a pub every 5 feet. So I'm like, this is just party central. This is like, I'm at university, but I have money and it's okay to go out every night. Like, oh my God.
You
So
tend to mention pub in your newsletters often.
Yeah, heaven on earth, you know. So
Guilty.
but it's incredible. So I loved it, and a week in, I called up and asked for a transfer. It's probably the ballsiest thing I did in my 20s. I took my London manager into his office and I said, listen, I know you and my New York manager don't get along, and he doesn't really like you either. So if you really want to piss him off, hire me. And literally, he went, "You're hired." I couldn't believe it. I went, so 4 months later, I moved to London, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was 1999, pre 9/11, you know, absolutely chaotic, wonderful, you know, true.
You were there 10 years. So
I was there until 2009, basically.
And so you were there long enough to actually get citizenship? Is that
yeah? So that's how I naturalized. But and again, this is Tony Blair opening the borders, hoping everyone's going to vote Labor because of that. I would never have voted for Tony Blair ever in a million years. But it was great, so I took advantage of it, and I never had any intention of ever giving up a U.S. passport ever. You know, I used to say to like girlfriends I had, listen, I want, if we do get married and have kids, I want them to be American.
Yeah.
You know, so it was never that point. What happened was I got transferred to Singapore, and I knew I was going to go back to England. Like I didn't. It's not that I didn't feel American anymore. It's just I knew I wasn't going to live in the country anymore. So I I filled out my taxes every year in England. You didn't really feel it because like it was like an extra 350 quid a year to do, you know. So expat accountants charge a bit more. Fine, you know, it wasn't anything big. But when I got to Singapore in 2009, so January 2009, right after the crash, literally, the Singapore government gave a tax rebate. They said to their citizens, don't give us this money. Pay us like 8% this year. That was the max tax rate in Singapore. Just pay us 8% and then spend the money. Go to the malls. Like, please do something with it so we can reach up the economy. But I, being an American, had to pay my US taxes still. And I was just like, all right, maybe we don't do everything the right way. And it was an enormously expensive proposition to keep a passport to a country that I just wasn't ever going to live in again. Then I met my wife about a year later, and I said to her, right before we were going to get married, so this is like literally a couple of weeks before, I said, listen, we've had a great time, been together a year, we love each other. I go, but listen, I want to give up this passport because if we have children immediately, okay, this kid is going to have a US passport. This is when the IRS had set up offices in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and Taipei, rounding up the oops Americans, like people who were born in America, stayed there for a month and just started robbing them afterwards.
Or they were just born to American people. And the US, this is like, I hate to use the word evil. It's evil to use the word evil, but so reserve it. But a lot of people watching don't understand this. If you could have been born in America, right, and your parents left or something, you are considered an American citizen, and all your children are considered American citizens.
That's right.
And taxes are owed to the US government anywhere in the world. And
that's right.
these cucked governments, like you mentioned, Beijing, around, IRS actually has offices there searching records for people who might just be Americans, and then clawing back taxes, especially if they happen to be rich. I'm sure if they're just some poor guy on the street or, have a little shop, it's not going to be a big problem for them, but say they become wealthy, right? And
well, no, it's actually, Richard, if I may, it's more of a problem for the middle class than it is for the wealthy. The wealthy will just go to their accountants, go, how do I rearrange everything? In fact, many of them choose not to give up their passports because they just rearrange their assets in such a way where they're not subject to that exit tax, because the exit tax is huge. The middle class, and this is when you find so many middle class people like me, especially at that time, Just going, listen, this is an expensive thing. You can't open up a bank account in most countries now because of FATCA. If you're a Yank, okay, they just don't let you. Like I joke around. I got the most important documents I have: my British passport, my Italian passport, and my loss of citizenship document, which I have to present every time I open an account. If I go, I am not an American anymore. Here you go.
I had to use a damn agent.
Yeah.
To basically bribe a bank to get me an account here in Thailand.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all.
Yeah,
that's par for the course. And and again, a lot of Americans who go to H&R Block to have their tax returns done for like whatever it was, 60, $70, don't understand what an expensive proposition it is. If you have a business and you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure you're going through this, where you get your stuff right so you don't get audited, because the audit process is worse than anything. I've had friends who, because they own businesses outside America and then gave up their passports. They went through like 18 months of insanity with the IRS going, you owe us 25, 30, 40, 50 grand before we'll let you expatriate. Fortunately or unfortunately, I never had to do that. I have enough assets to do that. But
yeah, I had a personal, and I owned a company at the time, about 30 employees, about 3 million a year of revenue. And I had an IRS 3-year personal and 3-year corporate. But the thing was, it was kind of fun. I was very aggressive with them.
You've got to be.
And in the end, they only nicked me on the corporate. Personal, scot-free. I used a tax attorney for that. For the corporate, I used a business consultant and a CPA. But in the end, they nicked me for $12,500 because there was a provision in the U.S. tax code for companies. You could buy a vehicle over like so much weight. It was like 6,000 pounds or something, and you could write it off in 1 year in that tax year and not amortize it, right? So I bought a Hummer H2 and I wrote the whole fucking thing off, 65,000. And the IRS guy is like, why does a financial company need? We did debt workouts for companies and individuals. It's like, why does a finance company need a Hummer H2? Right? So it was like, okay, all right, IRS, you win. Here's your check for 12 to 5, right?
Yeah. Now that's fair enough. I mean, it's not really. I keep telling people income tax is the second pillar of the Communist Manifesto. There's nothing about freedom that has anything associated with an income tax. It's ridiculous. And inheritance tax, and all those taxes, they should go. But if you say that, people go crazy.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but when I thought about how we were going to do this banner, and when I told people you expatriated from America, I was going to do Kathy Newman on you. So you're saying you hate freedom. So what you're saying is you hate freedom. We
should live like lobsters. Yes. That was brilliant. God, I still watch that every once in a while for a good laugh. Interview with our Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Oh, wait, for years, for like 2 years after there, we were just all over the internet. Anywhere you were, someone would say something and you'd go like, so what you're saying is, and then you.
Oh, it's just absolutely gold. Quality. Meme quality stuff.
So you had the British passport, you gave up your US passport citizenship, right?
Yeah.
So you're an American by birth, but you're no longer a citizen of the United States federal government, right? Yeah, right. But there's another part to the story too. You have secured a now. Oh, So your passport now it's British, not European Union, right?
No, I have an Italian passport too.
Yeah, I know. But your British one is
not an EU passport.
Was it an EU passport before, but then Brexit? Yes.
Right.
So that made it British. So in order to get an EU passport, you discovered you had family heritage, Italy, and I don't how many fucking hoops you must have had to jump through. But you have.
Oh, dude, it's brilliant.
So those watching this, here's a guy born in Jersey, goes to live in England, has an American passport. Toss that in the dumpster. And he has a British passport and now an Italian passport, which is an EU passport since Italy is. Right. So you can essentially live anywhere in the European Union you wish to.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. That was it's a funny story. Before we talk about that, let me preface this. I voted out for Brexit. I wanted out. I think the United Kingdom is better off outside the EU because the euro is going to pull the EU off the cliff. And it may not just be the euro, it's this position on Russia that the EU has that I think is ludicrous. But there were a couple of reasons why I did it. One, I still love England and would have moved back to England if their entry requirements for non-EEA spouses. So the EEA is the European Economic Area, which encompasses the EU plus Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. So if you have a spouse, like I do, from somewhere else, like the Philippines, to get into the country, you need to fill out an 85-page application, or at least you did 3-4 years ago. And because I'm a freelancer, this is brilliant, right? Now, they're letting boat people in and stay free at hotels, but in order to calm the British government into thinking I would never use their social services, I would have had to have parked £65,000 in a bank account where they could see it and know that I had not touched it for 9 months before I moved. So I would be able to live on that as a freelancer. If I had a job, it would have been fine. They would have been like, don't worry about that. But I did want to go back to work for a bank just to work in England so I could pay tax to the British government. I thought that was stupid. So I had done a coding boot camp in Barcelona. My wife was there with me. My business partner, Andy, was there. We love Barcelona. We decided that we didn't want to go to Barcelona, though, because it's a bit crowded. So I was like, God, what alternatives do I have? Because the reason why I went to Barcelona is because Filipinos can get Spanish passports quicker. Like within 2 years, you can apply because of their Spanish Empire. So I was always thinking in terms of her. And then I talked to my mom. I go, Mom, no, my mother's maiden name is Zingaro. So I said, Mom, do we have like any answer? Because we were always American. My grandfather was just the proudest Yank of all time, even though he had a vowel at the end of his surname. So we never thought about Italy. We did not speak Italian ever in the house. I still don't speak Italian. I regret that terribly right now. It's a bit of a pain here. I need to learn it. But we ate pasta every Sunday and did the normal Jersey Italian stuff. But I did a little digging, and on the 11th, there's like 11 scenarios you could use to get your Italian passport. We were the 11th scenario. And the only reason why we were able to get it is because my great-grandfather did not become an American citizen until after my grandfather was born. So in Italian law, the Italian passport passed my grandfather, then to my mother, then to me. And nobody knew anything about that until I discovered all this. So I went, great, let's do it. And another really happy circumstance was I was in the Philippines, so there are not many people claiming Italian citizenship in the Philippines. So I was the only person there that they needed to service. If I was in Argentina or Brazil, I probably never would have got it. So that was another happy circumstance. But the conversation I had was hilarious. The hoops were hilarious because I went up to Manila in the embassy and I said, hi, I'm here. Here are my documents. But none of it was apostilled. Apostilled is the international variation and notification. Notarization. So I'm like, okay. So she's like, all right, I'll tell you exactly what I have to do. She goes, so you're American. I go, I was born there, but I don't live there. And I don't have the passport anymore. She goes, okay, what passport do you have? I go, British. She goes, okay, your parents, they're still in America, right? Yes, they are. Okay, are you married? Yes. To whom? A Filipino. Where'd you get married? Singapore. Great. Do you have children? Yes. Where were they born? Hong Kong. Where do you live now? Cebu. And she looked up at me. She goes, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, I'm not. I didn't plan it this way. But, that's pretty much what's going on. She goes, you have to go back to every country, the country that issued the documentation, get it apostilled there, and then come back to me. I'm like, oh my God, geez. All right. So we had to go. Luckily, this is pre-COVID, so I was able to run around Singapore, Hong Kong, get all our documents in Asia. We had a lawyer, a law firm in Italy do all the Italian docs, and then my mother did all the American docs for us. And it took us 3 full years to get it, well, 2.5 years to get it done, pretty much.
Please.
So, yeah, my uncle said to me, he's like, imagine how productive you'd be if you didn't have to worry about all this crap.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, and that's just, it's such, I mean, the overhead of government on humanity is better than 50% of all productivity, really.
Oh, easily. It's like you're running a startup, and you the first thing you go out and do is like get mahogany wall trimmings. It's like, dude, we're doing it all wrong. Like, and that's why I love Singapore so much, because the government is small. You don't notice it. There are barely cops on the streets. Everything's so well run. I know Singapore's not for everybody. I heard that heat certainly wasn't for me.
I heard a news report some years back that one thing Singapore does is it pays its government people pretty well, so they're not fucking corrupt.
Yeah, that's right. Here in the highest paid civil service in the world.
Here in Thailand, a policeman starts out at 12,000 baht a month, which is about $400.
Bucks, yeah.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And that's
so when you recognize that every fucking Thai cop is a goddamn thief, right? It's understandable, right? They got a uniform, a badge, a gun, and they're a thief. Highway robber.
Exactly, and it's that's the problem with a lot of people who finally get that badge or that title. It's like, dude, I'm the government now, so you're going to have to do it. I have legitimate, let's call it legal power over you, even though it's not really legitimate power over you. So I'm going to extort you.
Now, on the other hand, I was talking to someone about this the other day. Said, I'm a scofflaw here in a foreign country, right? An expat in a foreign country, and I'm kind of a scofflaw. So, I don't observe the helmet law, and lately I don't observe the mask law, so I get stopped by the cops, right? But what I say to them is, oh, look at that Thai person. Oh, look at that Thai person. No helmet, no mask. Look at that Thai person. You say, you stop me because you want money, right? So normally we settle at well, every time actually settle at 500 baht, which is 15 bucks, right? Now that's happened maybe a half dozen times in 2.5 years. I say, okay, if you're in the law and order United States, you get stopped for speeding on the freeway. It could be a $300 ticket.
Oh,
and it's not good. Oh, it doesn't go in the cop's pocket. Well, you know what? I'd rather 15 bucks go in the cop's pocket, right? So there's two sides.
Totally. And that's the problem. Like, governments have realized that they need to raise revenue. So, and what they'll do is statistical analysis to justify it. They go, listen, we know people speed at this much, so therefore, if you're not writing these tickets, you're not doing your job, and we'll find somebody else who will. So that's how they hold it over the cops' heads. And sure, it's not going into their pocket, but the expense is insane. You get a $300 ticket, plus you get points on your license, and your insurance premium goes up. So the knock-on effects from being corruption-free, let's put that in quotes, is extraordinarily expensive, and it really arguably is more corrupt than paying a cop.
Yeah,
I don't mind that at all.
Yep. So what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to tell you about your Italian experience. So my father was born in Germany. And I've looked.
Yes, you mentioned that,
I've looked into it, and they have a similar sort of process where a descendant can go in, and I thought about it, but man, there's the the paperwork burden. And first of all, you have to go like hire somebody to go dig in all these goddamn records and everything.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, not for me. I think for me, I keep my American thing, but I don't have kids. Tax liability. I deal with that. Okay, just put it right. So
no, and that's why I always say, and I've written this many times in the room. It's like, listen, it's not for everybody. I don't go running around saying you got to give up your passport. I wouldn't for most people, because most people do have families in the United States that want to see you. Like I could go back because we got to separate it too. Like people who give up their U.S. passport for an idiotic passport like Dominica, which I think anyone who recommends that should just be strung up. Like I've got two
recommends what? I'm sorry, recommends
recommends getting a Dominica passport or some sort of small Caribbean passport.
Yeah.
Like those countries, like even St. Kitts and Nevis is now at risk of losing their European Union visa-free zoning because of the offshore financial center that they built there. So it's never safe. Like I have two major passports. I will be allowed into the United States just because of them. If I want to go see family or visit my parents, I'm in no danger of not re-entering the United States unless I get a criminal record, which I don't plan on doing ever. So it made loads of sense for me. And also because we were going to live there, I knew my son Michael wasn't going to grow up there, so I didn't want him to get hit with tax. So there were two very good reasons for me to do it. But no, it's not for everybody. I mean, and I don't look at people and go, well, you don't give it up, so you're not welcome to call that. Care. It doesn't matter. If the United States didn't have citizenship-based taxation, there would never be a reason to give it up. There wouldn't be a reason to give it up. So in fact,
actually, we're gonna have to do an intermission because Zoom changed their rules. So we're gonna have to stop this video and restart another, and then I'll thread them together later. Right. So I didn't know that until I got an alert just now. Anyway, so in 2 minutes, 2 minutes to tell us the difference between the Philippines and Italy.
Oh God, the food, the development. And let me just really quickly, you can't build like you can build here because you're in the middle of a typhoon zone. You're just never going to be able to build like that. So the ancient buildings that I walk past every day, and I'm in Asti, Italy, so that's like Asti Spumante for you Americans out there watching this, like that really sugary, bubbly stuff that I don't drink. Funnily enough, I drink Barbera, which is a lovely red. You can't build like that in the Philippines. So everything's constantly getting mowed down. The level of development is just not there. And of course, a country that lacks confidence like the Philippines is going to be a bit more difficult to navigate. Here, yes, there's red tape. There's no doubt about it, but everybody's so nice about it. Like it's not tough to get stuff done. We're getting our paperwork done. It's taking a little bit longer, but it's not this onerous, awful, oh my God process. The weather here is 1,000 times better. The food here is 1,000 times better. Although I love the Philippine seafoods. Philippine cuisine, no. Thai cuisine blows away Philippine cuisine. But the fresh seafood was amazing there. And of course, we had our family there, so it was great to, Pam, my in-laws, who are lovely people, they were there. That was nice. And my parents are moving here to retire with us, so we're kind of switching off the family.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so Micah will have his grandparents around until they shuffle off their motor coils, which hopefully is a while down the road.
All right, hey man.
Cool.
Let's cut it, and I'll do a new meeting. We'll send you a link, but let's stop the recording, and then I'll re-record. I'll thread it together later. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah. All right.
See you in a bit.
Okay, so we're back, and let me get rid of this dialogue here. I'm sorry. It's just a little kerfuffle. Zoom changed their requirements, so I had to deal with that and make it in 2 videos. So anyway, but it offers a nice thing. We talked about our personal stuff and your very unique situation of becoming an expat, a real expat.
Expat. Yes, a genuine one.
Yeah, a genuine expat. So, but so now let's like source a little bit of your financial expertise. You know, Sean, like I said before, his newsletter, The Rude Awakening, from Baratime Press. So it's like I said, it's not all just charts. You do a lot of, sometimes you do some personal stories, which is great. That makes a great newsletter, right? And
thank you.
but the other thing is that you know, there's little political tinges, even geopolitics, trading in the sense of global trade and everything. So I have a question to ask you right at the beginning of this. What about that ruble?
Oh, dude, dude,
it cracks me the fuck up. It's like
it's brilliant. It's just everything and what's brilliant, Richard, a couple of things that are hilarious about this. One, I am not the only person who said this was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So, you know, I've written about it numerously in the root for my fellow Free the Animal subscribers. Okay, since day one, I have said do not sanction Russia, because the last time we sanctioned Russia in 2014, we created the world's largest wheat exporter. Okay, that is what happened. That was the result of those sanctions.
I just saw in the news they're having their biggest banner year of wheat production ever. And the U.S. used to send wheat to the Soviet Union because they were fucking starving.
That, you know, and that's the thing. Like it's so, like, the whole thing is so clown world. One, we know sanctions don't work. Like there is not one iota of economic theory that says sanctions actually work. You can get away with it for a while in a country like Iran, because literally every country around Iran hates them. Okay, so they don't mind it, but even Iran has figured a way around their sanctions. Okay, they're not in good shape, they're not healthy, they're not fine, but they're surviving. Yeah. You cannot take 140 million chess grandmasters and stick them in a corner and go, "You're going to cop this." It just doesn't work.
A quick aside on that, on Iran. So you have, if you mention Iran, you have to mention. We don't have to mention North Korea, because, but you could mention Cuba. Right? Or yeah. Cuba. I mean, what I want to ask is, in all these years, decades and decades and decades of U.S. sanctions against Korea, how much have they made on cigars worldwide?
Well, Cuba, that's the thing. Like, and it's really funny you mentioned that, because when I first moved to London, I was walking down the street and they're like, "Cuban cigars," and I'm like, "Are you guys allowed to do that?" Like, I remember. And I snuck back in from London.
It is an example of how fucking stupid some Americans are, right? Because Cuban cigars, you can get Cuban cigars anywhere in the world except America.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous. And I remember I snuck in with a box of Monte Cristos. It was the first thing I bought. I was like, "Oh my God, I can bring these back to the guys." And I remember we were smoking at a strip club and my buddy threw up in the ashtray. It's hilarious. But, you know, it's one of those things where we know sanctions don't work. They are a political means of conducting war. That's what they are. And Russia rightly views them as an act of war, but they're not going to fire missiles back. They're going to go, "Okay, let's have some fun. I'm going to call our buddies China up." China immediately offered union pay. So the MasterCard Visa thing was out the window literally on day one. Like people did not get that.
And how much revenue is MasterCard and Visa going to lose downstream in decades? And you know, and something like this, it's like this ought to be red meat. I'm sorry, red meat for.
I'm foaming at the mouth too.
Yeah, I'm foaming at the mouth. This should be red meat for securities lawyers. Say, look.
Dude, if I were their shareholders, and watch, that will happen, because European companies are already clamoring to get back in. They already realize how dumb this is. McDonald's is closing their stores, but they're trying to sell everything off to what was it, Uncle Vidania or whatever that is. You know, they basically turned the Golden Arches sideways and turned it into a Russian thing. Like it's dumb. All it has done is wreck the companies that are there. And notice Koch Industries did not shut down their plants there. They were like, we're not following this stupid stuff. All it's going to do is going to wind up in the hands of Putin anyway. Let's just continue on. And listen, if Charlie Koch isn't getting out of there, like you shouldn't be getting out of there. That's a really smart guy. You know, so the financial sanctions don't work. All Russia does is look at the workarounds. And the other thing that they're doing, and I think people are going to come to hate America and Western Europe because of this, you are literally squeezing the food supply. And the people who are suffering are Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Africa, especially Africa. Even the Philippines, and this is something I didn't know until this whole thing blew up. Philippines gets 18% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine. 18%. Yeah, Philippines. Like it's like, wow, I didn't realize that at all.
Well,
you know, so capital
they,
flows matter.
They could, you know, Filipinos don't need wheat. They can get rice, and they have plenty of fruit de mer, you know, and frutta de mare if in Italian, and right, and they have lots of fruit and vegetables. I mean, here in Thailand, it's like, especially out in rural Thailand, which I know a little bit because I've been out there, built a house out there, and you know, it's amazing how these people know food sources. I mean, larvae, bugs, but fruits. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, like when you move up the food chain, though, like and this is you know, key thing. Like rice just doesn't give you all the nutrients that wheat does, and that's why we love wheat. And
well,
you know, when you look at it,
the problem is that both are pretty crappy when they're bleached and the everything, you know, the germ is taken out, and they're not whole. So, but you know, it's true that wheat in whole form, in whole grain form, is more nutrition than rice in whole grain form. The problem is most wheat and rice consumed is of the refined bleached variety. So they're both just starch. Pretty much just starch, you know.
They're certainly not the plants and grains that our ancestors were consuming. That's certainly true. But if you look at, like, when you're moving up the food chain, it's kind of like rice, then wheat, and soybean, okay, because you got your tofu, so you get some protein there, even though it's not great for men at all. And then you move into your proper protein, where you get your fish and your chicken and your pork and your beef. And that's usually the pricing on that. You know, the more protein you have, the more expensive it is.
Of course. And of course, in the USA, you have to put corn in there. But here in Asia, corn is
corn, yes, of course, yes.
Corn is not a big deal.
Well, and you know, that's when you look at the staple foods. Like even in the Philippines, pan de sal is what you eat in the morning, which is basically salt bread. You know, and it's a roll. I mean, there's nothing different about it than a roll that we would eat.
I'm sorry, what is it?
It's called pan de sal, so it's salt bread. But it's basically a roll. But that's it.
Here in Thailand, in the rural areas, their staple really is green papayas. So papayas grow all over the place. I have a great joke. I make the villagers laugh when I'm out there. I say, anyone got a ripe papaya for me? And they laugh. But you know, when it's translated, they know because they eat them all green. It's like, peel them, chop, da, da, da. Oh, and they use fermented fish sauce, which is special.
My wife loves that.
What?
My wife loves that stuff.
Yeah, and spicy as hell. And they use these little damn crabs, the kind of crabs you see running around on a beach that are not like our Dungeness and king crab and all those kind of things, you know. So they eat this stuff, and you know, every day.
Yeah, and again, if you know, for Southeast Asia, they're very lucky that way. And Hans, like people like Hans Hopper talk about this. It's like you don't have to develop when stuff's falling off your trees. Like when you get winter, you got to develop really quickly. You've got to go. How do we eat for those 5 months a year? You know. So
there was another thing I was going to say when I got here. I'm like going to say like sorry for my lack of dress, but there are 2 seasons in Thailand which are called hot and fucking hot. And,
exactly.
And May is when it begins fucking hot. And I only use my air conditioner in my bedroom at night to sleep, and mostly to dehumidify because it's so hot and humid. Well, you know, you've been to the Philippines, you know exactly how it is.
My first trip to Asia was to Thailand during the Songkran. And we went to Bangkok, and I had never felt heat like that in my life. I mean, and it's funny because I had no plans of staying out in Asia for 13 years. In fact, I didn't plan to stay in Europe for 10 years, but it just happened.
What's really cool is after now 28 months in country, I'm so damn acclimated to the heat. It just does. I tell you, you know, you just at a point. Your mind stops getting you agitated about it.
Yeah.
And
I found being out there having cold showers like did the trick. Like once I figured that, it took me years to figure that joke out, but I never took a hot shower in Asia after I figured that out. Because you know, when you take a hot shower, you walk out that heat, you drenched. Just all over again.
I lived in an off-grid place at the very tip of Baja, Mexico for 3 months, and it had a propane water heater, because since it's solar electricity, you only so your refrigerator is propane, hot water heater is propane. Day 1, I turned off the hot water heater.
Yeah, don't need it.
Right? And
don't need it.
No, don't need it. And I had no AC, just fans. The sun could run fans even all night because I had solar and battery. So you have a store for the evening, and so the fans worked fine.
Here I sleep with the windows open. It's just lovely. It's just like I'm breathing fresh air. I'm not breathing air conditioning in anymore. I mean, I normally have my two doors open here.
You're probably not far in terms of latitude from where I lived in Toulon, France for 2 years. And
we're just down the road from there. It's great.
It can get pretty bitch cold there in the winter, you know, and right. But the summers are so fucking delightful on the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
August and September, it's like it is the most. It never rains. You got 2 months: July, August, September, maybe 3. Where it's just it can get hot, but man, but the thing is, if you go swimming in the Med, it's proper water. It's at the right temperature. Yeah, it's cold. Yeah. It's cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean we're an hour north of Genoa, which I just went to for the first time. Very
very similar latitude. That's
right. Yeah.
Here in Thailand, I'm at about 7 degrees. So, you know, and in Singapore, you were like at 2, right?
Yeah, we were on the equator. It was 120 kilometers north of the equator.
Due north, yeah. I've been there a few times. Yeah, I don't know how it is now because climatology changed. But when I was there in the 80s, a few times, I said, "Man, you can tell time by when it rains every day at 1 o'clock."
2 to 4, 1 o'clock, yeah. It moved to 2 to 4 when I was there, and now I don't know when. It's changed a bit, but what I loved about it was that you got the crazy lightning storms. Like Singapore has more lightning strikes per square mile than anywhere else on the planet because they built a city where a spray forest should be. So that's understandable. But you didn't get the crazy wind. So you didn't get typhoons. Yeah. So everything just turned away from us. So we'd get the heavy rain and it would piss down. But it wasn't like things were blowing over.
Twice in the last month or so, I've had the closest lightning strikes I've ever seen in my life. I'm talking like 30 meters. And there's at 30 meters, there is no difference between the flash and the boom.
Yeah. when we were living we lived on Fort Road in Singapore, a lovely place.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, this is right when we were first married, I'll never forget this as long as I live. We had a lightning strike next to our apartment.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same, the boom and the flash at the same time. My wife, from under the covers, jumped on my head like the cat in the Pepe Le Pew cartoons. And dude, and my heart was thumping. I'm not gonna lie, but it was. I'm like, I can't breathe. Could you get off me, please? It's okay.
If my guess is correct, since we both hang around with Asian chicks, and you for a little bit more long time than me, I don't really mind them jumping on my head.
No, you don't mind at all. It's a delightful experience if you can get it. That's what I crack. Speaking of that, I crack up with all these guys.
Hey, we say no more. This is a family show, right?
Yeah, it's a family show. No, that's fine. But continue with things. At least I crack up at these guys who are in the West Coast. Can't get a girl, can't get a wife. Oh, things are miserable. Like, dude, buy a ticket to Asia. Just go. Just go. Even if you don't stay forever. 2 or 3 weeks will change your life. You only need that. I shouldn't like divert this to about what I blog about because it's about you, but you've seen I've blogged a little bit about testosterone. So my theme is kind of like build it and they will come. In other words, stop worrying about your testosterone. Yeah.
Go get a woman that you want to have sex with all the damn time. Then your testosterone will fix. You won't even think about your testosterone, right?
That's right. Yeah, there are so many. I don't want to say I almost say manufactured crises in the West, and obviously, pharma has.
And by the way, I have something to sell you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
And the thing is, not only is it big pharma that's pushing this, it's the anti-big pharma who are going, listen, don't listen to them because they're crazy. I've got something to sell you instead. And it's like, God, like Pam's a pharmacist, my wife, hilariously, and I hate taking pills. Like I can't stand taking pills. And for 20 years I didn't take pills, and I still really don't take pills, even if they're prescribed or whatever. But the amount of people who are on drugs, and I said this to my parents when I get here, I go, leave your medicine cabinets behind, because I'll tell you, when you get here and Italian doctors look at you, they're gonna go, you're on all this crap? Yeah, get off 3/4 of it straight away. And just start eating better.
I had a grandmother one time, and she was having problems. And I was a kid at the time. It was my dad's mother from Germany, and she was having so my uncles, my dad and my uncles, kind of took note, and they're like, I can't remember the number. Must have been like at least 12 prescriptions. Right? So how about as first step, stop all of them, start over, right?
Yeah.
They go in, people, especially older people, they're so damn trust. I don't know why old people just trust anybody who tells them anything, everything. They can see shit they can see someone say something on The Price is Right, a Price is Right rerun. And say, yeah, that's what I need to do, right?
I say that to my parents too. Like my dad was on pills recently, his hands started shaking. I'm like, well, stop taking pills. Like it's just that simple. Like and doctors get stuff wrong all the time. And I think this was about 10 years ago or something. Last time I looked at the stat, but there's like 300,000 doctor-induced deaths every year in the United States. And it's. Sure, yeah, and they say, oh, it's not doctor-induced and blah, 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 and a lot of other variables, but dude, like, you don't need doctors for everything. Like for bad stuff you can't get rid of, go see a doctor. But for stuff that like nagging aches and pains,
we have to have
exercise, something.
We have to have a healthcare industry.
Oh,
industry,
goodness.
right?
And it's a human right, Richard.
No, now see, I've said this to people for years and years. I said, the problem is that people they say health insurance. They're not talking about health insurance. They're talking about a maintenance plan. So the difference between when you buy a car and you have a warranty, it's limited, for years and miles, right? As opposed to a maintenance plan, which you can buy, but for a much higher expense. That's where, basically anything except tires, right?
Yeah. I look at it, if you really wanted to make healthcare work, you would make it clear to the populace that, it's a call option on emergency surgeries. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. You don't want to get medically bankrupt, which is one of the most, I think it's the biggest cause of bankruptcy in the United States.
Okay, remember there's an audience here. So you just used the call option to me, knowing I know what it means. So explain a call option to the audience.
So in very layman's terms, okay, you're going to pay a little bit of money that will cover you for a very big cost later on if you incur. Okay, that would be the easiest way to explain it in terms of insurance. And you pay a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. So if you get a $100,000 bill because you need a kidney transplant or something like that, that's going to be covered by your whatever $20 a month payments. Obviously, it's much higher than that. But if they did it like that, that's all it would cost. It wouldn't cost an enormous amount of money every month. What people are going for? Sorry, go ahead.
I have a personal example of an option. There's calls and puts. It's kind of which way you think the market is going to move, which one you choose, right? But I just did an option the other day, and that was my girl out in Surin is vying to start a clothing store in a university district, right? Mm-hmm. Very good location, lots of traffic, young girls, and it's chick clothes, everything that makes a young chick feel pretty and sexy and everything else, right? Good business, right?
Yeah, I had no trouble financing that.
If you've ever been to a mall, and seen the difference between what's there for men and what's there for women, you kind of get an understanding, right? So anyway, but she finds this nice location. I'm working on raising some funds to get her started, right? But it's not there yet. So I said, go in and get an option from the landlord to hold the place for 1 month, right?
Yeah.
For 5,000 baht, which is about $160, something like that. So if we get it, then that applies to the, whatever. If we don't, we lose it, right? So that's how it works, right? So.
Yeah, and that's, again, those things are great. I mean, most people don't want to lose anything, and that's why they shun those plans, but they're good plans. That's what insurance is all about. It's not about, having on-call doctors every second when you have a hangnail, which is pretty much what they do in England. I mean, that's what the NHS is essentially. And to be fair, it is like that here in Italy as well, although I'm not quite familiar with the system yet. But, that's why they're getting boob jobs on the NHS. That's why they give it all this unnecessary, ridiculous surgery.
Elective surgeries.
Elective surgeries. And then during the COVID crisis, we'll put that in quotes too, canceling 50,000 cancer surgeries. It's like, I think the wrong way around, kids.
I imagine you can sign up for a get your dick cut off. Sure.
Trans people, so it's that stuff to me should not be covered by that kind of plan. But if you're a taxpayer and you're an aspiring transgender person, if I'm using the correct term, pre-op, I guess would be the term, you're going to say, well, I pay my tax, so I'm entitled to that. It's like,
Well, and part of this too, is that people don't really understand what insurance is.
No, they have no idea.
I've always said insurance is a Gaussian distribution. There are some losers. They pay insurance all their lives. They never get any.
They never use
from
it.
it. There are some on the other side who are big winners. They pay a little and they cash in big. But most everybody in the fat part of the curve, what you're doing is you're spreading your cost of misfortunes over a long time rather than getting hit big time with one thing.
Right? That's right. Yeah, and that's a great way to explain it. I think politicians have sold the cradle to the grave. We're going to take care of you forever. You never have to worry about anything because we're here. And people went, great.
Did you read the thing about bio-Leninism?
I loved it. Thank you for sending that over. I have to admit, I'm much more familiar with the Austrian economics arguments on the libertarians, but that was really interesting. And what it reminded me of bio-Leninism, I immediately thought back to 16 Candles. Remember that movie from the 80s where Anthony Michael Hall is sitting there going, dude, I'm king of the dipshits. The first thing I thought of, I'm like, yeah, that's what essentially we're doing. We're creating all of these suffering grievance classes, and they get to be in positions of power.
Yeah, and now we're now in the process of manufacturing them, so that you can then say, hey, if you're loyal to us, we will give you undeserved status, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, what's brilliant about that essay is that it's, first of all, the fundamental is that, you think people seek money, power, love. Yes, but those are means by which you attain status.
Yeah.
Status is everything. And
nobody ever bought a Ferrari for their commute, Richard.
Yeah. And so you take some green-haired, tattooed, and pierced cunt, and you make her a school teacher.
Well, I mean, to me, it's not just the school teacher. They're up in the upper echelons of government. And
too. Yeah.
I understand that people don't quite understand what makes enterprises successful. And I understand that government is not business and they're not run exactly the same way. But I'll go back to an argument that the Austrians, like Ludwig von Mises, put up. He said, listen, there are entrepreneurs and there are cousins. When he was talking about family inheritance, he goes, entrepreneurs and cousins. He's like, there are people who can organize things. And one of his precepts that I love, and I wish people would understand this. Entrepreneurs don't get paid to own capital. They get paid to organize capital.
Yeah.
And the better you are in organization, the more successful you're going to be, generally speaking, barring unforeseen circumstances like our idiotic government policies. The cousins are useless, okay? They're never going to help you out in terms of your enterprise because they don't know how to organize things. So what we are seeing now is that this elevation of those people who couldn't organize a piss up in the brewery, as the British would say, and that's why everything is completely disorganized at the top. That's why we're having so much trouble thanks to these policies that our governments are laying out for us. And yes, it does trickle down. We have the Long March 3 institutions. Now we got school teachers, who are peddling stuff. I can't believe they peddle. Like my son's only 5. We're sending him to school in September. So I haven't paid too much attention to what they're teaching in schools other than like stupid stuff like Common Core, And I just can't believe they're starting sex ed in kindergarten. And it reminds me of the cigarette makers who are peddling cigarettes to kids.
You're not talking about your son in school in the Philippines, right?
No, he couldn't go in the Philippines because they shut the schools down. So we're in Asti in Italy, and there's a bilingual school down the road, and we're gonna, he needs to integrate. We want to integrate. We want to speak Italian. We don't want to be the expats necessarily.
But
and it's
So tell me, the Italians aren't that fucking stupid. They're going to be teaching that you're white, so you have original sin. You're privileged.
The Catholic Church still has a bit of cachet
no,
here, but I don't know if
your
it's
your
that
your
much.
your whole 5 years so far has been oppression of Black people. So they're not. He's not going to get that, right?
He better not get that. He'll be pulled out of that school immediately. But what he, I mean, for us, it's a bilingual school, so we're very happy with that.
Yeah.
He'll have English, and he speaks English with me anyway, perfectly. But it's one of those things where, like, I just can't believe the stuff that they like try to get into the curriculum at such a young age. It reminds me of when they were, peddling cigarettes to kids. And why do you do that? It's because you want them to start young, get into the habit, and then by the time they get to be adults, it's like, yeah, great. And it really is tearing. And if you look, all you need to do is look at European demographics to see what a problem this has become. It's a disaster.
That's an interesting idea, though. Excuse me, particularly with cigarettes. If you think of cigarettes, you think, so you're a tobacco company, you produce cigarettes, you market to kids, it's cool. What is your lifelong expected revenue? I mean, would you care if he died 20 years earlier? It's like you've already made thousands from that one person.
One person, that's right. Yeah, lifetime customer value is insane. Yeah, it's huge. And you do look cool. Listen, I can't stand when people are like, you don't look cool with a cigarette in your mouth. Yes, you do. Just watch Humphrey Bogart. Of course you do. That's why people want to do it. I look at J.R.R. Tolkien with his pipe, and I'm like, man, I wish I looked that cool. And he was a professor. And there you go. You look cool.
Cool, man. Want me to?
It just is. They did such a great job associated.
You know what? I shouldn't, but I tell people I shouldn't. I say, but I like it, right?
Yeah. Dude, and I'm the same way with beer. I shouldn't do it. I got a little bit of a part, but I'm not giving up beer. Give me a break. And arguably, alcohol's the worst thing you can do. So it's we're all going to have our vices. We're all going to do things that they don't want us to do. But it's the back to your point of bio-Leninism. This isn't even about what you're doing. This is not about action. This is about who you are. Let me
interject for 30 seconds here to those who don't know, and I'll give links in the things. It's a brilliant essay. It's put together about 7 years ago, I guess. And it really explains a lot of what you're seeing, like psychologically. So you have these people who are just like, they're not very they're only okay within their own little cliques, the green hairs, the transes, the homos, and on and on, right? The hardcore feminists, blah blah blah. The stuff that mainstream society really doesn't like. So what the left does is they give them a bargain. Say, okay, in exchange for your loyalty, we will elevate your status to way more. We'll put you on the news channel. We'll interview you, right? We'll highlight you. You will have status, right? So that's bio-Leninism. But you don't even necessarily have to understand Lenin, but that's what Lenin did. He brought in peasants and outcasts and made them the head of the country. So there you go. All right. We got 5 minutes, Sean. Go ahead.
So what can I'm sorry. Okay. No,
dude, you're smart. Take it away.
Okay. Well,
right.
Just to continue.
And you know what? Here's 5 minutes to convey what you think. What you think, whatever been on your mind about anything, and you write the newsletter. So what's of concern to you? What do you think?
Right now.
No, I'm putting you on the fucking spot, man, because you're
that's fine. I love it. Now Russia is front of mind.
In a pub in London, I'd say you're a proper cunt. So take it away.
Yes. Oh God, I miss my British English. I gotta get my accent back. But my friend of mine is Russia, Ukraine, looking awfully a lot like the beginning of World War I, where it's like, oh, let's join all these alliances, and then nothing's going to happen, and then of course World War I happened. Yeah. And today's route, it's about Sweden and Finland joining NATO, which
well, didn't their app get rejected, or did they?
Well, that's what I'm writing today. In today's route, it's Turkey throwing a wobbler.
Yeah,
I don't want them in.
Yeah,
and the thing is, Turkey will acquiesce. They will acquiesce because they're just trying. Yeah, I think the reason why I think a couple of reasons. One, I guess the consensus is that Erdogan, is just kind of playing for higher pricing because the leader's in trouble. He needs a win, so he wants Sweden and Finland to stop harboring the PKK and other groups that are hostile to Turkey, who want a piece of Turkey for themselves. He also wants, and with that, he wants Sweden to lift the weapons ban because Sweden can't export weapons to Turkey right now. Turkey's like, what's that all about? And if you're going to be in NATO, you're going to have to do that since we're like on the same team, right? So that's going to be interesting. I think they'll eventually get in. But after Putin's spokesperson kind of threw a wobbler and said there are going to be grave consequences, Putin was like, listen, you can join. I don't really care because if you're not sticking nukes there and you're not sticking bases there, like what's the difference? And that to me is the same thing. Like what? And what was the point of this whole thing?
Finland is not Ukraine. You're not going to send our army through Finland, right?
Dude, the Finns have enjoyed success against the Russians, not negotiated with the Russians. Yeah. They've had a lot of fun with the Russians. It's like, dude, you want to cross that frozen tundra and try it on again? You go right ahead. But you're already having trouble down in Ukraine. And I don't think, and again, the exaggerated news reports are crazy. Russia's not losing this war. That's just absurd. He's just not incinerating the place, which is what CNN wants because they want a news story. So it's like, oh, he must be losing them.
It's hilarious to me, just to interject. I see all this stuff all the time. And it's almost like methinks thou dost protest too much.
Oh, totally. Yeah, exactly.
I think Putin had a reasonable plan. He had reasonable demands, and I think he's probably going to come out of this with his Donbass area on the Black Sea secured, and he's going to be satisfied with that.
I reckon it's going to go a little bit further. I think he's going to grab all the way around to Transnistria. I think he's going to be very, very happy. Ukraine is going to be partitioned after this. But what has to happen, Europe has to wake up. And that's why I think it's going to drag out another 6 months, because one of the things that most people don't understand is if you want natural gas, you've got to pump it early to fill up your storage, and they need to do it now. And they're going to, by the time they get to winter, it's going to be awfully cold in Europe. And
1 minute, Sean.
Yep.
Take it away. 1 minute.
Yeah, so I think that once Europe wakes up and goes, we've got a gigantic gas station right next to us and we need to use it and not get LNG from across the Atlantic as this insane costs rocket, Europe wakes up, then a lot of this is going to go away. But until that happens, Victoria Nuland and her State Department cronies are in charge of Ukraine, and this is not going to end anytime soon. So,
all right, man. I'm going to stop it here. We'll do it again.
It was a pleasure, Richard. Thank you very much.